Welcome to the Epic Success Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Shannon Irvine. This is just a preamble to my intro that I did for Michael Hyatt when I interviewed him. He is coming on to talk about his new book, The Vision-Driven Leader. And I really am excited for this interview right now in this season. It's so important that we operate from vision, especially when we can't see clearly. And right now, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. There's a lot of things shifting and changing, and it can feel overwhelming. And without a vision, people perish, according to scripture. And the way Michael breaks down how to create vision in the business and how to stand in it in uncertain times is just, it's so prophetic. It's so exactly what we needed to have right now. So I'm going to pop you over to the intro I already did, but enjoy. I know this is going to bless you. Here we go. All right. Today on the Epic Success Podcast, I am welcoming back the one and the only Michael Hyatt. He has a new book coming out right now, and I believe it drops today, called The Vision-Driven Leader, where Michael literally gives you a 10-step vision plan. He calls it his vision script, and he, through the book, walks you through how to create a vision, what a vision is and what a vision isn't, that will create the results that you want, and how to implement it in your life and in your business so that you get the results that you're after. We are so aligned in terms of how the brain works and how vision, we do our vision brain priming here at the Epic Success Academy and with my neuro coaches. And Michael talks in this interview all about how he has been brain priming to create vision. So I really cannot wait for you to dive into this episode to hear about the vision-driven leader, all the components, and literally learn the map to creating a vision to your future. All right, let's dive in. Here's Michael Hyatt. Michael, welcome back to the Epic Success Podcast. So excited to have you today.
Thank you, Shannon. I appreciate you having me on again.
Michael and I were talking before you guys came on, where I was just saying, I've read everything that Michael has written, and he's been a big part of my success journey. As you well know, everybody who's a listener has heard this before. When I heard Michael was writing another book, I thought, gosh, how could he top the last one? And I've spent the last 5 days up at a ski resort with my family and have been reading The Vision-Driven Leader. And this has to get in the hands of every entrepreneur and CEO out there, Michael. This is, in my opinion, your best work.
Well, thank you. Honestly, I feel that way. And I'm not sure if it's, just the enthusiasm of a new book, or if it objectively is the best book I've written, but I feel like it is. I've never been more excited about a book I've written and more convinced that it will help people, actually, entrepreneurs and business leaders who are trying to move their companies forward. They got to start with vision.
Yeah. Let's just dive in. So the premise of the book, and I love the way it's laid out. It is literally like you're putting your arm around somebody and walking them through 10 questions that if they walk through this piece with you, they come out on the other side with something that can create a breakthrough business, in my opinion, like next level up leveling. So let's just dive into a little bit of why you believe vision drives everything.
Well, I was really influenced early in my career by Dr. Stephen Covey, and habit number 2 in his 7 Habits book is begin with the end in mind. Yeah. And when I think about leaders, the primary function of a leader is to lead. But if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know where you're taking people, then you're just going on a walk. Yeah. To lead people means you've got to have a destination clearly in view. And that destination is a vision of a bigger, better future. And I think it's the foundation of every significant change, of every significant growth cycle. It's the ability, it provides the ability to scale your business, but to do it in a way that doesn't sacrifice your most important priorities, personal priorities and elsewhere.
Yeah. And this is something that has been a big catalyst for me watching you over the years, seeing you put your family first, seeing that value being such a high priority, yet at the same time, you're able to lead a company that is arguably the best online company available out there in terms of personal growth and personal development and business development.
Well, thank you.
let's talk about this word vision, because it's a word that gets thrown around, and I see a lot of people do this in January. Probably bugs you as much as it bugs me, I would imagine. Just, we get on that, like, let's create, let's do the vision, let's write it all down. And then they do this and then think that somehow it's going to be, manifested out there. I would love for you to talk about, what is vision to you? Like, what is that? And so people can start to get their mind around what you define as a vision.
Okay. Well, vision really is clarity around a future state.
Yeah.
And particularly a future state that's preferable or superior to the present. So the way I define a vision in the book is, I say vision is a clear, inspiring, practical, and attractive picture of your organization's future. But I would also say that it has to be written down. There are a lot of leaders, in fact, the bulk of leaders, majority of leaders, who have this sort of vague notion of they want something better in the future, but they've either never bothered to define it for themselves, or they never bothered to, articulate it to other people. And so it doesn't really serve any organizational function if you don't get clear and if you don't express it. And so the whole premise of the book is that mere mortals, people like us, who maybe don't consider ourselves particularly charismatic or certainly not clairvoyant, can come up with a vision. This is not something that's, only for the select few, but it's something that any vision or any leader can do, provided they understand the formula and are willing to put in the work. And it's not that much work, but it is some work. You're going to have to think differently. You're going to have to set aside the time to get clear, because clarity is not something that just drops out of heaven. It takes some work, and it takes some dedicated, deep work to do it.
Yeah. So I would love for you to just deep dive there on that, on some of those things that you just talked about, just the having to put the time aside and having to do that deep dive. What does that look like in your world, differently than maybe some of the people that you've been able to lead and then get to transform into this level of a vision?
Yeah, so I tell the story in the book about becoming a general manager for one of Thomas Nelson Publishers' 14 publishing divisions. And when I took over this division, it was one of 14 divisions in the company. It just so happened, to my shock, it was 14th out of 14 in terms of revenue growth. It was actually shrinking. Ooh. And in terms of profitability, it actually lost money the previous year. Oh, and so the CEO of the company said to me, he said, how long is it going to take you to turn this division around? Because honestly, it's a drag on the entire company. And we were a publicly held company. And so our performance was being watched every quarter by analysts on Wall Street and all the rest. So I picked a number out of the air. I didn't really have a clue, but I said, I think it's going to take about 3 years. That seemed reasonable to me. He said, well, that sounds reasonable to him. And so he said, you got it. So the first thing I did, Shannon, was that I went off on a private retreat with my financials from the division, with my org chart, with our publication list for the next 3 years and a few other documents. And I began to think about, what would I like to see happen over the course of the next 3 years? Now, a vision statement, as I teach it in the book, and the vision-driven leader needs to think about the vision in terms of a 3 to 5 year time horizon.
Right.
Beyond that, it's mostly guessing. Right. Less than that, and it's not going to really be strategic. So on that private retreat, I wrote down as a series of bullets what I wanted to be true in 3 years, because that was the time horizon that I'd given to the CEO. Right. So I wrote down things like, I want to see 5 New York Times bestsellers every year. So our company, or our division, had no bestsellers. And so to write that down was a really, stretch of faith, and I had to imagine it. Then I said, I want to actually cut our publication list, because my people were drowning in work. They had too much to do. They didn't have time to really ensure quality control or promote the books they were publishing. So I said, I want to cut the list from 120 titles a year to 48 titles a year. Now that was totally counterintuitive.
Wow. Yeah.
Because kind of the conventional wisdom was, the more you publish, the more money you'll make. And I said, no, I don't think that's really true. I think there's a law of diminishing returns here. And then another point that I made is that I wanted to see my people maximize their bonus opportunities so that every year they were earning as much as they possibly could make, because I knew that would energize the team. It would drive momentum and continue momentum. So I had like 10 bullet points like that. Here's the thing I learned in that exercise. I had kind of been hamstrung, if you will, prior to that, thinking that if I wanted to have a vision, it had to be this clever, pithy, short, statement that I could put on a coffee mug or put on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
And what I discovered was, A, I'm not that clever. B, even if you come up with something that's short and pithy, it's probably not going to be robust enough to actually guide people's behavior and paint a picture that people could strive toward. And so just getting that kind of elementary view of a vision script, and that's what I call it, a vision script, was enormously helpful. That division, we were able to turn around, not in 3 years, which is what I told the CEO and what I had planned for. We were able to turn it around because we had the vision, because we were aligned, and because it drove execution. We turned it around in a year and a half. We went from number 14 to number 1 in terms of revenue growth, to number 14 to number 1 in profit margin. And that division remained the most profitable division in that company from the year 2000 to the year I left, which was 2011.
Wow. You know, I want to unpack so much of what you just said because there is gold there. One of the things we talk about a lot on the Epic Success podcast is I come from a very brain-based perspective, right? And we have to believe it before you actually see it. And that's neurologically proven through neuroscience, right? So I help entrepreneurs really train their brains to transform their business. This is what you said is like the premise of my neurocoaching model. You went into that retreat, you sat down and you created not just a bullet list of it would be nice if, you went against conventional logic in terms of what was perceived as working in the space. And you created this level of belief in what could be. How important was sitting down at the end of that session and looking at it and embracing it as if it was done already before you started?
It was critical important. And this is, speaking of brain science, something that I learned from the world of athletic performance coaching. That your brain can't really differentiate between something vividly imagined and something actually experienced, right? So one of the premises of a vision script is you got to write it in the present tense as though it were already happening. So you're hacking your belief system into bringing it into creation. And so I don't tell this story in the book, but I recently read about a reporter who was interviewing Michael Phelps after a big Olympic race where he'd won a gold medal. And he said, I noticed that before the race that you seemed to be just kind of staring into space. You were expressionless. He said, I have to assume that you were imagining the finish of the race. You were like rehearsing the finish of the race. And he said, oh no, that wasn't it at all. He said, I was rehearsing every single stroke.
Yeah.
And that's what you do with the vision script. You're basically rehearsing what this reality is going to look like, smell like, feel like. You're going to describe it as in the most vivid, concrete language as you can, not just so that you can see it. That's critically important. If you can't see it, you can't sell it. But number two, you want it to be concrete and explicit for the people you're trying to enroll in the vision. Because if you're going to have a chance of accomplishing it, it's going to take a team, and you've got to be able to enroll them in it. And that's one of the values of having a written statement or a written script as well, is you've got something to share with other people. It's not just something rattling around in your head, but it's something that's expressed and out there.
So good. We call that brain priming. And I love, we always talk about people who are at this 8-figure mark and how they sometimes are accidental brain primers. I don't think you're accidental in anything that you do. I think you go through and study people like athletes and high performance to the degree where you just know that your brain has to see it before it actually believes that it can happen. And one of the things I would love for you to dive into, and then I want to do a deep dive on the vision script, is what about people who, because of fears and overwhelm and that worthiness question, create visions that are probable? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I kind of talked about a similar thing in my book, Your Best Year Ever, where I talked about where do you set your goals? Are they in your comfort zone? Because that's what probably 85% of the people out there do. They set a goal in their comfort zone. They know they can achieve it, and they usually don't. And then it just proves to them that goal setting doesn't work. But all the best goal achievement research I've seen says that you've got to set your goals in the discomfort zone. There's got to be an element of risk involved if it's going to ignite your imagination, if it's going to command your best thinking, if it's really going to energize your team. It's got to be in the discomfort zone. Now it can't be or shouldn't be in the delusional zone. So your goals need to be inspiring. I have an entire chapter, or your vision needs to be inspiring. I have an entire chapter in the book on that very topic.
Yeah.
And I talk about 4 criteria for that. But one of them is that they have to be risky, but not stupid.
Right.
So here's the thing about it, that when your brain or when your vision is really compelling, then it helps you to get over the fear. Mm-hmm. Because here's what a lot of people don't realize. Courage and confidence are 2 different things.
Yeah.
And I got this insight. I want to give credit where credit's due. I got this insight from Dan Sullivan. They look exactly the same from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
You say, oh, that person's courageous or that person's confident. It looks like they have no fear, right? Courage almost always has fear, but you do it anyway. You do it scared. Confidence is what happens after you've done it and where the fear dissipates.
Oh, so true. So true.
So if you have the vision, you can really overcome. If you have the vision, you're willing to do it scared.
Yeah.
And so that's the value of it.
So important to hear that, because there is this belief that's so prevalent that once I am confident, then I can create a vision like that. Once I have all this confidence, and I hear it a lot because I certify coaches in my neurocoaching model. And the number one reason they come to get certified is I want the confidence to coach. And I throw them in the deep end and say, start coaching and you'll get the confidence, So
that's totally it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The confidence comes over time after doing it scared. Absolutely.
Yeah. Over and over again.
Can I mention one thing? You ask about overwhelm. A lot of people that come to you feel overwhelmed, and my coaching clients come to me feeling overwhelmed too. In fact, I would say that's sort of the default operating sort of mechanism that everybody has today. They're overwhelmed. Yeah. The great thing about a vision, about clarity about your future, it serves as a filter so you don't have to be overwhelmed. The reason people are overwhelmed is that everything looks of equal importance. They've got a to-do list that they can't possibly achieve. They got more goals than they could accomplish. And the reason for that is there's not a vision that serves as a filter to differentiate from an opportunity from a distraction. Yeah. A lot of distractions show up masquerading as opportunities. And the more successful you are, the more problematic this becomes. Yeah. Because the more successful you are, the more you attract opportunities. And before long, you're right back to overwhelm again. But if you have clarity around a vision, you've got a mechanism by which you can filter out those opportunities and say, you know what, this aligns with the vision, we're going to do it. Or more likely than not, this doesn't align with their vision, we're going to say no. This is why people are able to achieve more by doing less with a clear vision. That
is 100% the experience I've had. When I was offline and all word of mouth, I didn't have to put myself out there and it was just known in circles. And so that was great. And then bringing the business online now 3.5 years ago only, it feels like dog years, internet years, I swear. But, when we hit the 7-figure mark, all of a sudden, all these opportunities, which sounded the ego, oh my gosh, sounded so good. Like, oh, I want to be on that stage. Oh, I want to, and I literally had to go bunker myself in at the hotel in Del Mar that I do my vision every year and say, here's the vision and here it is to the team. And I want you to dive into this because we have to sell it. And first selling it after we sell ourselves on it, it has to go to the team. And I gave them the reins of, if it aligns, bring it to me. If it doesn't align, I want you to stop it at the gate. And that was the game changer for my business right there. Because otherwise I probably would say yes a lot more than I should, Well,
me too, because I'm honestly a recovering people pleaser.
Me too. Yeah.
And it's hard for me to say no to people unless I've got a more compelling thing to say yes to. Yeah. So I know when I'm saying no to something, there's really a bigger yes that's providing the context for that no. So unless you have that bigger yes, the thing that you are saying yes to, the thing that you're giving your attention to, the thing that you're focusing your resources on, it's going to be very difficult to say no.
Yeah. So let's dive into the vision script and talk a little bit about what is important for, you have a whole process that you walk people through in the book. And so I'd love for you to give at least a 30,000 foot view of what a vision script looks like. And of course, in the book they can deep dive into it, but.
Yeah, and I give lots of examples of it in the book. But so again, let me just go back to the definition, then I'm going to unpack it a little bit. So a vision is a clear, inspiring, practical, and attractive picture of your organization's future. Yeah. So let's start with the fact that it's an imagined future. You're going to literally, or I say figuratively, step into the future 3 to 5 years out. You're going to be looking at a future that's superior to the present. Now, this is important because a lot of us misuse this faculty of imagination to imagine the worst case scenario, right?
Absolutely.
And so we have to be in the realm of possibility, imagine a future that's superior to the present, that motivates you. Because if it doesn't motivate you, it's not going to motivate anybody else. You can't sell what you haven't bought. Yeah. So it's got to be something that first and foremost motivates you, that guides day-to-day decision-making, and around which your team can rally. Okay, it's going to be written. There's something powerful, Shannon, about writing a vision down. There's this famous quote that I love to quote that says, thoughts disentangle themselves, passing over the lips and through pencil tips. Mm-hmm. Writing it down forces you to get clear. It may be muddled in your head. You may not have enough clarity, you think, to even write it down. But once you start the process and trust the process, the clarity will happen. It may not happen all at once, but in writing, it does happen. You're going to write it in the present tense. Again, it's going to be a 3 to 5 page document, and it's going to be organized around 4 components. First of all, the future of your team. Mm-hmm. Now, I start with that first because your team is the most important component in bringing about your vision.
100%.
You know, if your dream doesn't require a team, then your dream isn't big enough. Mm-hmm. And if your dream is big and it requires a team, then your team is going to be the ones that bring this dream, this vision to pass. You can't do it on your own. Mm-hmm. So the team, the kind of people you're going to acquire, the kind of people you're going to retain, the kind of culture that you're going to build, critically important, and that's all specified right there in that team section of the vision script. Mm. Second, the product. A lot of people think they're in the business of selling widgets or they got a service that they're offering. You know, what I define as a product, it's the transformation that your clients or your customers get by means of that widget or by means of that service. It's never the thing itself. It's something else. Maybe it's a feeling that they hope to have when they use your product or be seen with your product or whatever it is. So get clear on the vision for the product. Third component, your vision of the future of the marketing. How do you intend to bring this thing to market? And then fourth, the impact. Could be financial impact. What are your revenue numbers? What is your profit? Critically important to do that, because if you drift to an undefined place, you're probably not going to drift to a good place. Yeah. So to be clear about the vision in terms of the financial metrics, this could be the size of your organization. It could be, the number of web visits or podcast listeners or anything. Yeah. But on that impact, get the metrics down that you want to hit over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. So that's pretty much a vision script.
And is this something that you do at the beginning or the end of the year before the next year? Is this something you do every year? Is this something that drives 3 to 5 years? I would love for you to kind of paint, what does it look like in Michael Hyatt's head? And how do you revisit this every year?
This is a great question. So there's going to be the first time you create it, and then there's going to be the subsequent times where you're going to be revising it.
Yeah.
So the first time you create it is always the most difficult because it's like, writing the first draft of a book or writing the first draft of a blog post or anything else you write. It's trying to do the brain dump, getting it out of your head so then you can manipulate it and edit it. So generally what it looks like is this: you as the leader going away for a 1-day retreat.
Yes.
This is not something you can delegate. It's not something you can outsource. It's not something you can hire done. You've got to do the hard, deep work of getting clear on what you want. It's that simple and it's that hard. Yes. So 1 day, write it down. And the cool thing is in the book, I have a series of prompting questions so that you don't have to face that dreaded blank screen. In fact, I've got a special online tool that's free for people to buy the book. And I'll tell you how your listeners can get this here in just a minute. But it walks you through the process. It's almost like paint by number. Okay, so set aside 1 day. You get clear. Then you're going to come back to your team. This depends on the size of your team. Maybe it's a business partner. Maybe it's your executive team. If you have a larger team, it's still going to be your inner circle, your first inner circle.
Yeah.
And what you're going to do is you're going to share it with them in a conversation that goes like this. Hey, I've been thinking about the future of our business. And I don't have it all figured out, but I think I really got some clarity about some things that I'd like to see over the course of the next 3 years. I'd like to share them with you. And honestly, I need your help to get it right. You're going to see things I didn't see. You're going to see things that I've missed entirely, things that I don't quite have right. But I just want you to know that this is an environment that's safe for dissent. I want you to push back. We can get involved in vigorous debate because I want this to collectively be our vision, not just my vision.
Yes.
And then just shut up and listen. Let them go after it.
That's so true.
And then what you're going to do is practice what I call cascading communication, which is you roll it out to the next level down. So like in my company, it starts with me. Then I have my COO, which is Megan, my daughter. Then I have our executive team. Then we have our broader leadership team, and then we have the entire company. We don't we move through it sequentially like that, so nobody's surprised. So no leader's surprised when the people that report to them learn about it. They've already bought into it and are aligned with the vision. That creates this kind of cascading alignment down the organization. Now, to your question, how often do we revisit it?
Yeah,
we revisit this every year as the very first part of our strategic planning process.
Okay.
So we pull it out and we say, is there anything about this that needs to change? Because now we're a year closer to the thing that we saw last year. And when you get closer to things, sometimes you find out that that mountain that you thought was the final mountain in the range, no, there are mountains behind the mountain, or
right.
There is an entire range behind the mountain. So what do we see now from this vantage point that would inform the vision statement? So we give ourselves permission to tweak, to revise, to discard, to add, whatever it is. And once we get clear on that, then in the strategic planning process, then we go through the process of, a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, strategic priorities, our annual goals, quarterly goals, and so forth. Then we roll it out to the entire team.
Okay.
So we have an annual team meeting. I stand up and read through the entire vision statement, or vision script, right. With enthusiasm. Because I want people to be engaged, not just intellectually, but emotionally. I don't just want to transfer cognitively, but I want them to feel my passion. So I read that. So we did that in January. And I had a lady who had just started in our customer service department about 3 months before. And she came up to me and she said with tears in her eyes, and she said, thank you. Thank you for going through this vision script. She said, because honestly, it felt like my job was a grind, but now I get it. Now I see what it is we're trying to create. And I'm so honored to be part of it. That's exactly the kind of impact you want to have, and why you can't just, it's not just one and done, create it and then file it away, but this has got to be a living operative document in your organization. We read one of those 4 components every quarter at our quarterly training sessions. So I don't read those. We have somebody else do it with enthusiasm. And so that we can keep revisiting this, because Andy Stanley, who's somebody I adore and love his stuff, he says vision leaks.
Yes.
And it does. Yes, and you as the leader have to keep refilling the bucket. Otherwise, your organization runs dry. And when we run out of vision, it's like the Bible says, without vision, the people perish.
Amen. I love that this re-enrollment process is such a big part of what you're doing. And it makes sense, because if we're going to be going out and enrolling people into the vision, to buying into the vision as a customer, as a consumer, right? If our team isn't, not just cognitively, but emotionally, physically, like all of the areas of their mind fully bought in, it starts to work against the company, doesn't it? Like
it totally does.
Yeah.
Gallup recently did a study, and they said American workers, less than 15% of American workers are engaged at work.
Yeah. Wow.
That's horrific.
Yeah.
But think of it this way. What are they engaged around? And this is where it has to start with vision. Especially with millennials. Yeah. Almost everybody in my company, with about 2 exceptions, is all of that generation. They're millennials, and they are much maligned. People complain about millennials. They don't have the right work ethic. They seem to be entitled, blah, 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 blah. Let me tell you something. I love millennials. Yeah. If you give millennials a reason to wake up in the morning, if you give them a sense of purpose, if you give them a clear vision, they will work themselves to death. In fact, we have unlimited PTO for our employees. We do not have a set amount of vacation time. We have unlimited PTO. They can take off whenever they want. We still have to beg them to take time off. because they're so engaged. But it starts with vision. Then as a leader, you have to create alignment so you don't have sideways energy and a lot of wasted effort.
Yeah.
But you can't have alignment until you have vision.
Yeah.
Then once you get the alignment, then you can start driving execution so that, everybody's rowing together, so that everybody's daily activities line up with those annual goals and with the overall 3-year vision. But all that begins with vision, alignment, and execution. And it's futile to try to work on execution without alignment or alignment without vision. That's why it all comes back to vision.
Where are some of the places that you see leaders, without maybe even their knowledge, just the vision gets sideways on them? What are some of those pitfalls, some of those things that they can start to look out for if they really buy into the vision script and leading from the vision instead of leading from the to-do list this year? And they go and do this beautiful art of a vision and convey it to their team and really get the buy-in, and they start that way. Where have you seen it go sideways, and what can they do to rein it back?
Well, every vision is going to be opposed. It's just the nature of creating vision. Anything important, any important improvement is going to be opposed. Stephen Pressfield wrote an amazing book on this called The War of Art, where he talks about this thing called the resistance, right? And so if you have a vision, and this throws a lot of leaders off, they think, man, I've come down from the mountain. I've got this amazing view of the future. The team's all excited. We're gung-ho. So what could go wrong? We're going to do it. And then at the first encounter of resistance, they would throw out the vision and give up on it. Yeah. So just a quick story I tell in the book. So back when I was at Thomas Nelson, and when I was trying to turn that vision or that division around, I went off and I created that sort of rudimentary view of what I now call a vision script. So those 10 bullet points. Went back, got the team all jacked up about it. Everybody was excited. Everybody's going to work hard. 30 days later, we found out that our biggest author, an author that we had a huge book planned for. In fact, the book was at the printer. We were ready to, start running the presses. We had paid this author $1 million advance. We were expecting about $3 to $4 million in revenue that year. And this author had gone off the rails and was saying some crazy stuff in public that was not only making her look like an idiot, but was going to reflect badly on our company. Yeah. At first when I first heard it, I thought that can't be true. Yeah. And then I actually flew out, went to her office, met with her, and she confirmed everything. She said, no, not only have I said that, but I'm standing by it. It's my new thing. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. So I went back to the office, and I just had this sick feeling in my stomach because I thought, we can't publish this book with integrity. I talked to my immediate boss, and he said, you have to publish the book. We got too big of an investment to write it off. And I said, I really don't think I can. He said, well, you better think about that. And so he gave me overnight. I went home and talked to Gail. I said, Gail's my wife. And I said, honey, what am I going to do? This is like my dream job. I wanted to be a publisher my entire life. I've got this job. I've got this vision. But now I'm challenged with this. What am I going to do? She said, well, you got to do what you think you need to do. And whatever it is, I will stand with you on it. So I went in the next day and I said to him, I said, look, if you want to publish the book, obviously that's your prerogative. But if you do, I have to resign because I'm not willing to compromise my integrity to do it. Mm. And so he said, well, you go back to your office and you think about it some more because basically that's not the right answer. Right. So I went back to my office. I told my assistant, I said, I think you better pack me up. I think I just lost my job. I think my career is coming to an abrupt end. Wow. About 20 minutes later, I got a call from the CEO of the company. This was the same guy that asked me how long is going to take to turn that division around. Yeah. And he said, tell me the story on this author. So I told him the story. He said, what do you want to do? And I said, I think we have to pull the plug. We cannot publish this book and do it with integrity. And he said, how much is it going to cost? I said, well, we're going to have to write off $1 million advance and we're going to have $3 to $4 million of unrealized revenue this year. Right. And he said, do it. It's the right decision.
Oh, I just got chills.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it was just like, it was unbelievable. Now, I wasn't in such good shape with my immediate boss, who was between me and the CEO. Yeah. But like a few months later, the CEO said, why don't you start reporting to me? I can tell you're frustrated reporting to your current boss. Yeah. But oh my gosh, that so energized the team because they realized we were willing to stand for principle. Yeah. And I think every vision gets tested in that way. It tests your integrity. But then we had a bigger problem, Shannon, because now we're $3 to $4 million behind in terms of, realizing our annual plan. But we rolled up our sleeves, we did the best we could, and it was okay. We made it up and then some. And like I said, we turned that division around in 1.5 years, not 3 years. But I think every vision is going to be tested like that. And so you can't freak out when it happens to you. You can't be surprised. Just remember, you heard it on this podcast.
Yeah.
When you encounter that resistance, just think to yourself, oh, he warned me that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And now here it is.
Yeah.
And it's really almost God's way or the universe's way of saying to you, do you really believe in this vision?
Yeah.
Are you willing to fight for it?
Yes.
So I think it's a good thing. It tests our mettle, and we'll come out stronger if we just stay there.
It's such a good thing. It does separate people, no doubt about it, for those who are just dabblers and those who are really committed to the call on their life from God. So, I love, and you talk about this in the resistance section, that it is your character. It is those character traits of integrity and of courage, which you talked about, and of that tenacity. I mean, the tenaciousness that it took to say, I am willing to be unemployed and walk away from the thing that I wanted most in the world because I stand on a principle that this is not going to be in alignment with my vision. And then being willing to see that through, regardless of the result. Like, you couldn't have seen those results. No. Like, you couldn't have made that happen, manifested it, but you stood in the integrity of it, in the resistance. You didn't run from the resistance.
No. And so often it's easier to reflect on it and see what's happening,
sure,
through the rear view mirror than it is at the time, because at the time it felt extremely scary.
Yeah.
I remember when the CEO called me, of just trembling, literally my voice was shaking, and I was so scared because I saw this whole thing coming to an end. And that's happened maybe 2 or 3 times in my career. Yeah. And I think, and every time it's a test, and every time it's a good thing, and every time I get through it, I think that wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at it, it seems like an impossible thing. But I think there's another thing that happens to us, Shannon, that happens to leaders with vision and is a temptation. And that is when things start going south, or you encounter the resistance, or things aren't, the vision is kind of dying and it's not coming off like you envisioned it. Yeah. There's a temptation to stop talking about it.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, in the middle of the recession, 2009, this was many years later. This was like 9 years later than that last story. I'm in the middle of the recession. We didn't quite know what was happening. We knew that sales were slowing dramatically. Our sales fell 20% in 1 year. Our entire industry was reeling from this. And I was really tempted to give up. And I remember saying to a executive coach that I had, I said, I'm just tired of talking about the vision. I mean, I just feel like, it's a little bit incredulous, and it just doesn't even seem possible right now. And I feel like I need to shift the vision to just kind of surviving. Wow. And she said, no, not at all. She said, your people need hope now more than ever. And I said, but that's all I've been talking about for 6 months is the vision. I'm tired of it. She said, when you're tired of talking about the vision, you're half done.
Yeah.
And it was really true. So I went back by faith and kept preaching the vision. If you don't do that, then people have no connection to it. And if they're not connected to it, then the little tasks that they have to do every day become a grind. They become meaningless. People get disconnected from the vision. And when you disconnect them, it's like disconnecting them from the power source. Yes. That's the very thing that's going to fuel their drive and give them a sense of engagement. So the only person that can do that is you, the leader. You're the voice for the vision. If you stop speaking it, it ceases to exist, because the only place that it exists until it comes to pass is in your head and in your words. Yeah. Until then, that's all you've got.
Yeah. And you're creating something that hasn't existed before.
That's right.
And it's this roadmap. And that's what I love about the vision-driven leader. It's like this roadmap to creating a vision over and over and over again that's going to allow for this thing that didn't exist in the world before to come to pass. Won't happen through a to-do list. Won't happen by following people that have already done it necessarily, although those are good sages and guides along the way. But you're creating out of a place that, I mean, think about like you sitting there in that situation at the publishing house and to see like Michael Hyatt Co. hadn't even given birth yet, but yet all that you were experiencing and going through in the vision there gave birth to this company who's helped, thousands upon thousands of leaders become better leaders and visionaries become truly visionaries. Like, that term, which I love from our, dear friend, visionaries and integrators. And that it's great to know you're a visionary. It's a whole nother thing to take that vision and make it come to life. And I believe that's what this roadmap that you created, the vision
Thank you.
Driven.
That's certainly what I tried to do. I really wanted to make it practical. And somebody asked me the other day, they said, what is it that drives your writing? And I said, really, I think of it like the metaphor of a recipe. I figure out something that works, and I want somebody else in their kitchen without all my tools, with not all the stuff at my disposal, but just an ordinary person in an ordinary kitchen be able to recreate this cake and have an extraordinary experience. And I want people to create a vision that they can look back on and say, oh my gosh, it all began there. It was the vision that saw us through. And as it turned out, it was even bigger and better than how I envisioned it.
Yeah.
That's my hope.
Yeah. Oh, and I think that is absolutely it. This is now going to become a staple in my vision day. And for the girls, like, you can start your vision day with a spa day. Like, that's what I do. I start it with a massage at 9 a.m. and then I spend the rest of the day doing the vision. So do you, but I really want to encourage you. And Michael and I were talking about this ahead of time. I want this in your hands. Like, I really want this book in your hands. So we're going to be doing a lot of contests around it. You're going to be able to win Michael Hyatt's entire suite of books, including this masterpiece that he just finished up. And we're going to also give one lucky winner a year of his Full Focus Planner, which is the planner that I use and swear by in terms of its ability to take a vision and create reality out of it. So we're going to have fun.
That's awesome.
And really reward people for jumping in and diving into the vision. And so this is going to be a lot of fun as we get to be a part of seeing your book come to life out there.
That's terrific. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah.
I actually have a gift for your audience too.
Oh, awesome.
So if they buy the book between now and April the 4th, 2020, and I know some people will be listening after this, but if you're listening before that, you can go to visiondrivenleader.com/epic. And we've got several freebies for anybody that buys the book. You can buy the book from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local bookseller, but bring the receipt back to that page, that URL, and enter in your receipt number. And we will give you free the audio version of the book with me reading it.
No way.
The Kindle version of my last book, Free to Focus, if you haven't read that.
Oh my goodness.
The Vision Scripter tool, which I mentioned to you.
Yeah.
And also an invitation to an online group on Facebook where I will be present doing coaching on vision for the people that join that group.
Oh my goodness. What a gift. That is everything. Okay, we're going to have so much fun around this. You guys have to go get this book, bring the receipt back. That is a gold mine that Michael's giving you. And if you've never experienced Michael in his coaching, I mean, every single year, Pat Flynn and I dive in once again at the beginning of the year, every single year with him. And it is a game changer. So Michael, thank you for your generosity.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That's going to be a lot of fun. I would love for you to just leave a parting thought about, to my listener that's out there that has that big dream, has that big vision, maybe hasn't seen it come to fruition yet. And they're hearing us and they're wondering, is this maybe the thing that I need, that I'm missing? Can you leave a lasting comment to that person?
Yeah, I would say vision is how anything of significance gets created.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's a different state of health or mental health. I don't care if it's a rich, vibrant family life. Yeah. I don't care if it's a business. It's got to start with a vision of a bigger, better future. And if you can envision it, and as hokey as it sounds, you can create it. Mm-hmm. And it starts there. And I will say this too, is almost in every case, I can't think of an exception actually, but I'm allowing myself a little wiggle room, but I can't think of a single case where I envisioned something that I didn't get to it and it was better than what I envisioned.
Amen. Yeah.
We built a new office for our company here about 3 years ago. And at the time we thought, oh my gosh, we had a vision for this and we built it. And we thought this is the most we could imagine. And just a couple of weeks ago, we looked at it. We said, we weren't thinking big enough.
Yeah.
This space is about a third of what we need right now. And we thought at the time, this is like twice as much space as we need. But that's just the power of visioneering. It gives you something, a track to run on. So take time to stop, look at the map, get a vision, get some clear direction. You'll be able to get to that vision, that better future faster if you do that, than if you just keep forging ahead without a vision.
Love it. Love it so much. Michael, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. Thank you for this gift of the vision-driven leader. And I can't wait to see it get in everybody's hands and be a bestseller very, very quickly.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks for having me on again.
You got it. Whew. Okay. What an episode. Michael Hyatt is by far one of the greats in our industry. And really, you heard it so often, he said throughout that interview, that you have to believe it before you see it. And, here at the podcast, you hear me talking about that all the time. Your brain has to believe it before you can see it. It has to buy into it wholeheartedly as if it's already done. And this book is the script to get you there. And I love that Michael ended up the podcast not just talking about business, but whatever it is that you're going for in your life right now, whether it's health or wellness or in your relationships, or if it is in your business, having that script that guides the decision-making creates the clarity and gives you the confidence to know that you are taking the right steps in the right order and that it's going to align to get you to where you want to be. I hope this episode really blew your socks off. Of course, I would love for you to share it on social if it had an impact on you. If it did, please tag both Michael and I on Instagram or on Facebook and let us know what it was that really struck a chord with you. And that is going to be one of the ways we're going to start this contest. So you're going to get to buy the book. You're going to get to go to visiondrivenleader.com/epic and get all of those bonuses that Michael talked about. So you just bring your receipt, put your receipt number in there. You can buy it online, all of the places. So that entry also gets you an entry into the contest. So you're going to want to tag me and tag Michael with your big takeaway from the podcast. And that is your entry to win a year's supply of his full focus planner. So definitely get those bonuses. Tag us on socials. That's how we're going to be taking the drawing for this year's worth of planners, where you're going to see it out there as well. So I just cannot wait to hear what your vision is. And that's what I would love to see when you tag me on the socials and tag Michael as well. All right, that's it for this week on the Epic Success Podcast. Bye for now.